Good evening, John Lovelace for the Glenorchy Community Association, and thanks everyone for coming. We have a saying for our community meetings that if all the seats in the house are full, you know something bad is about to happen. So the fact that we're not packed out with sort of angry people is probably a good thing, and you can take what you will. And I think from a community association perspective, you know, the consultation and the information provision that's gone right the way through this process is probably second to none, from the quality and standards of the experts and the reports and the way that information is being presented to the community. It's been great. So I don't think anybody can say that if they were told something that you have a chance to put along. So you know, really from the community. We'd like to see a lot more of that from other parts of local government. So thank you to the RRC for you know, coming up the road so often to these meetings. Obviously, the GTA have followed the process as it's gone along, and it's a feedback session, so we'll give you some feedback. We'll discuss it with the committee. The science-based side of the engineering and the ground investigation, the hazards and the description that has been really good. It's been very helpful to have that set out. And the description of the risks and putting some numbers to the likelihood and what are the odds of something happening, you know, helps put things in perspective. Where we felt things could have been better was probably the social and economic assessment. The social side gave some really good scenarios of what might happen post a disaster, whether that was a flood or an alpine bottle. They're quite good. They're good for the community to workshop around and do some what if thinking. They've done a good description of what might happen and what the consequences to the community would be, and that was a great start for the discussion. I think the economic assessment could have been stronger, and we've said that in the past, so that shouldn't be any surprise to the RC, but that we're in a world where everyone's focused on the value of things. We've got a government that will not spend money unnecessarily. So if when that report said that the wealth generated at the head of the lake was 13 million, and yeah, I think quite a few of us felt there was a zero missing off at the end of there, just knowing what happened between a couple of small businesses in the town. So if the value of what happens here isn't truly captured, people won't want to spend the money to protect that. And that's really, you know, important in the time where there is no money anyway. Trying to get money to do things, you need really robust evidence of what you will lose. So I think that was a key thing that we would like to see. Maybe if that could be updated. It doesn't impact the outcomes and the options and the toolbox, but it will affect some decision making. The consultation going forward with the future toolbox, really urge people to have a look at that. Some difficulty in that some of this is ahead of government policy. So the ORC is asking people to say whether the managed retreat, voluntary or compulsory. We have no idea what that means. There's no government policy. There's no, oh, well, I'll get paid out this much if I do that. And these are probably the things that people on the ground, from the ground up, that's what they would really like to know. But that's down the line. But we're being asked for opinions on that now. And so that's a hard thing because there's never the right time. And we recognise that nobody's really going to spend serious money at the moment before an event happens, even though it's cheaper and more effective to do things proactively. So, you know, where is the government policy? We've got a government, I guess, that, regardless of your views on politics, you know, is wanting to pay money to generate more wealth and growth rather than pay money to take things away. So that's a bit of a difficult situation we've got at the moment. So I would ask you to look at that. There is some really good stuff in all the reports, and that you can go back to. I think when the strategy was published and people just went to the action plan page, there was a little bit of an underwhelming response. It seemed to be more about a plan to make a plan. When you nut down into that, there is some good stuff like what are the triggers, what are the warnings, what are the benchmarks that tell us we've got an issue with something. So those sort of things are good. There's action plans about doing various things, but we're not sure if there's money to back that up. So I think there was a bit of an expectation of these more concrete actions, concrete, idle walls and things. But we understand that is where it is, and I think probably what most people would envisage coming first will be planning controls. From a community point of view, we think it's really important that we have some really good early engagement, whether that's the regional council through a policy statement or Queenstown Council on its district plan. If they're going to change their plans, really, really important that we understand that, because otherwise planning rules change without context of what that means in terms of people's property rights and everything else. That's probably the key message for us going forward. If you could update the economic side of things. So we've got a better words to back up intervention as and when it's needed, and then some early engagements. But yeah, that's the feedback from the community association. But yeah, thank you for coming again. I'm sorry there's not more people, but so don't take that the wrong way. Because people do talk and ask about what happened, and people will watch it, and people are reading things online, and people will fill in the survey. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Everyone, my name is Jean-Luc Payan. I'm the manager of the Metro Hazards team at the Otago Regional Council, and it's good to see you here tonight. This is one session of many 3 years. Now we're going to see familiar faces. But before I start, I just want to check online. Are we all good with voice and picture? I stand.
I believe so. Yeah, some issue which is coming. Sergeant.
This work is collaboration between ORC, Queensland Hospital, Department and whenua. So it's not only an ORC program. We've got Glenorchy and significant representative in the room. We will try to make that start.
And we've had input from Akaha as a whenua representative along the way as well. The only reason that their logo's not on the front page is because that they prefer to be said that they were representatives of whenua rather than partners in the strategy. So it's because of the decision-making powers, the way that it's structured. But they certainly have had input along the way, and in the detailed report, there's a management evaluation. I just wanted to make that point that it feels like a gap, but actually it was a close relationship as much as a resource from land. Sorry.
The purpose of the presentation between me and Anne is really to give you the background for that program, why we need an adaptation program in the area. And Anne is going to cover the draft strategy, what it is about, and how it's going to be implemented. So really, purpose of that is to trigger the questions and trigger the feedback. But before we go into the strategy, most of the people here, I think, have been to previous sessions, so you know what I'm going to say. But there are many people here that need to understand this. So, why do we need to adapt at the head of the lake? And the head of the lake is not only Glenorchy, it's Glenorchy, Kinloch, all the area around that part of Whakatipu. So we're very conscious to not focusing on Glenorchy, but also on other areas and also infrastructures such as the roads that are part of the adaptation program. I will illustrate those points in the next few slides, but the main points here is it's a multi-hazard environment. There are many hazards that can affect different parts of the area. And it's a complex environment in the terms of those hazards interact with each other. And also the environment is constantly changing. If you take, for example, the reef of the Dark River, every day the river is different. Every day you've got sediment movement, channels could change course, and that in time affect natural hazard. And the other aspect is the climate is also changing, which also affect those hazards. In addition to those kind of evolving hazards, we also know, because of location of Glenorchy close to the Alpine Fort, that's another source of hazards. So there's no simple solution to deal with them. You can't really deal with one in isolation others, and because of the scaling and the dynamic nature of those processes, there's no one simple solution that you can use to kind of try to reduce a flood hazard or erosion. So that's really what the program is trying to achieve. It's really trying to understand the complexity, share that with community, listen to community's views around that, and start using this knowledge to build a plan of what can we do about it. And the most important thing is this is what we're doing together. It's not the council coming with a solution that's supposed to fix everything. It's really collaboration between the council and the community. Now I need more detail on hazard, but again, this is not the purpose of tonight, but I think it's a good reminder to give the context. Was that just a map of the head of the area? Glenorchy is located at the bottom right of the picture. And we've just indicated some of the main hazards that could affect different areas and some of the main processes. The one really to keep in mind are the flood-related hazards associated with the reefs and dart, the erosion hazard mainly for Kinloch and the road, and also the seismic hazards. I've mentioned the Alpine Fort. There's a high likelihood of this fort rupturing in the next 50 years, which will have consequences in Glenorchy, and the fact that the underlying ground is susceptible to liquefaction in some parts of Glenorchy, and to lateral spreading, which is basically movement of land close to the lake. To go to the next slide, but I will focus on Glenorchy, just reminding all this. There are other things we've considered in the strategy. It's more around lake tsunami. We know those could occur. We know that we don't have enough information to really characterize them, but we know that their consequence could be quite large if they occur, and that can be triggered by an earthquake, triggering a large landslide, triggering a big wave, that part of the lake, or even close to Queenstown. So about 5 years ago, we started an adaptation program, natural hazard adaptation program, and got the objective on the screen. One of the keywords is resilience. The purpose of the program is a framework to help the community build resilience. And that's reflect the ORC, one of the ORC strategic direction. So ORC decided really to focus, invest on community resilience, and that's a reflection of that direction that the council has taken through the years. So it's quite embedded in our thinking, and this work is really one illustration on what council is doing around building community resilience. And doing that with the community is also a way to hear what works for you in the community here. You can read those 3 points describing the approach, but for me, I want to focus on the last one. So we used guidance from central government. This is only guidance. There's no legislation saying you have to do it this way or this way, but they provided guidance on how to adapt to climate change. The guidance really focuses on coastal areas, but the approach, you can transport that very easily in an environment that is changing. It doesn't matter if it's coastal change or river changes. The same principles apply. It's based on a 10-step decision cycle and 5 main questions. So if we go to the next stage, start. I've got those 5 questions on the screen. Start at the top left. What's happening? That's really a phase of the program where we were really going into the detail of understanding the natural hazards, how bad they can be, how likely they could be. If we take a flood, for example, we did a lot of work in the last 5 years to better understand for Glenorchy where the flood sources come from. If we are flooding, how those sources combine together, and how deep, how fast water could be, because that drives also the consequence. If it's still water from the lake, for example, this will have different consequences compared with moving water on people building structure. So first step was really understanding those changes, but also understanding the physical, so understanding those hazards, but also understanding the potential changes to the physical environment. We did a lot of work with the University of Canterbury to better understand the changes in the recent drought channels and how this affects the problem. The other aspect of this is, the next part of the program is really discussing with the community what matters most for people, what people value here, how do they see the future. We completely acknowledge that people living in the remote live in the water for a reason. So what's the reason? It's, if it's closeness to the mountains, closeness to the river, actually, that we are investigating. It's key to understand that, because that will drive also the potential responses. By this, I mean, people value the fact that it's a relatively wide river system. An engineering option that is going to really try to control that may not be matching utility value around what people like in the area. So we did a lot of engagement with you here around what you value, how you see the future, and also asking you feedback on the first part of the program. What do you know, and have you missed anything in our investigation? The next stage was really focused on what can be done. So we did a lot of work around feasible options, whether it's engineering, whether it's vegetation-based options, whether it's planning, rules to control, the type of development. And again, we shared all this community, we received your ideas and we've considered them. And the next step is make it happen. So it's really putting all this knowledge from those 3 steps together into a document that bring that knowledge together and also think about the future. We are now at that, around that stage, create the plan, make it happen. The last 2 stages are really the implementation stages. We're not there, we are on the draft stage, so now it's for you to implement the strategy and what we can do. The next stage will be around putting things in place, making sure they are efficient, and having an update of the strategy based on new knowledge, based on changes that we were not necessarily considering at the start of the beginning. This is very sequential, but actually the work didn't happen that kind of way. Things started in parallel, and we had some time to look back, because we discovered something new and we have to do more work into what's happening part of the program. But generally speaking, that we are now on that finalizing the initial plan. Next, please. Just an illustration of the amount of work that's been done in the last 5 years. We've done the same 5 questions at the top of that table, and each box here, you don't need to read the details, it's in the reports, but each step is one study or one assessment or one engagement session. And that shows the amount of work that's being done to arrive to the point of the adaptation strategy development. So it's not something that, the strategy that was not formed in 6 months, or it was really based on a core program that enabled the strategy to be at the stage where it is. Now, strategy sometimes can mean it's a document and it's done, and people don't really look at it in the future, and that's not what we want to achieve with this strategy. You've got a description here of what the strategy is, but for me, in a nutshell, the strategy is a document that collects all this information that I talked about before in one place, all that wealth of knowledge and community feedback in one place. And the way I see it, it's an enabler. It's a source of information, but also an enabler for the community and the councils and other organizations interested in hazard or in the environment here to collectively go into one direction, and that's the role of the vision of the strategy with goals. So the way I see it, it's a document that the community can use, and we'll call that in more detail, in different ways, but one of them is really to take this and use to advocate to council on, things need to be done. Yeah, and the other key point, it's not a statutory plan. It doesn't force or there's no that could come out of this strategy. It's really a direction, joint direction for community, for councils to agree on and keep going through the years. In the next two slides, I just have a few examples of what the community you shared with us in the last few sessions. That was coming from the sessions we had around values, what people value in the area. That's just example, and we received more feedback than this, but I found them those were quite telling. So I give you to read this, but this is just to illustrate what people value, but the fact also the strategy is taking those values into account. And again, same purpose here. This was more around what can we do. So we came here at least once to talk to you about what do you think we can do to mitigate some of the hazards or changes that we identified in the previous stage of the work program. And all of them have been considered. Some of them were where they are. So I'll leave now Anne to explain in more detail what the strategy is about, and we talk about visions and goals. But if you have any question about what I've asked, feel free to what I've presented. So feel free to ask at the end of the talk. More than happy, although it's not the purpose of tonight. But if you have any question about the hazards, more than happy to talk about it either through the Q&A session after.
Do you have copies of that?
Of the presentation.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
of that booklet.
Yeah, so we've got summaries of the booklet available at the back. We also have few copies of the full document. It's quite a comprehensive document, but if you want a hard copy, yes, we have one. And all those documents are available on, we've got a specific page on the ORC website where you can find every presentation, document, council report, technical study available for you to download. So if you want any access to any of those previous studies or sessions, it's all available online.
So I'm Anne Conroy with the Natural Hazards team, with Jean-Luc, ORC, and I'll just go through some key parts of the draft strategy. So what we have here is actually two documents. There's the summary document. Everyone got a copy of that here, and Pete will share the link to that feedback document online. So that's got, I only have an hour, and I'm just going to read some key parts. And a summary survey form included in that document for feedback. So that's just a brief taste of the overall strategy. There are study document, which is a big meaty tome of lots of information, as Jean-Luc mentioned. So there's a lot more information in the big document than there is in the summary. But what we're going to present today is just the summary key parts of the draft strategy. And but we are absolutely welcome if you're keen to read the detail. You can download it off the website, or as Jean-Luc said, we'll give you a copy. And all feedback is welcome on both the summary and also the detailed strategy report. Yeah, there's a copy in the library. There's a copy at, I think, General Motors. So yes, please, and we're more than welcome to, print you out and post you one if you want one, if we run out of copies. But yes, wherever you want to give your feedback, we welcome it. So we'll just run through this, and thank you to Connie Anderson, won our competition for some artwork, the kids artwork competition. So ended up on the front cover of the strategy. We'll put some more of pictures up in the final edition as well. So we're just going to run through these are the key parts of narrative today. As I said, a lot more detail in the big document, but in terms of getting through reasonable amount of information in summary, this is what we'll touch on. So basically, we're going to run through the big picture down to detail, so covering sort of our direction first in our vision, goals, and objectives. And then the meatier parts of the detail are around the action plan, which includes existing and planned commitments. So they're things that we're going to track. Delivery of that is in the first draft of the first version of the implementation of the strategy. The future toolbox is other possible responses that we've all identified together that we might need in the future, but at the moment they're not commitments because they're not included yet in anyone's business. They need a business case to be made, and decision makers still need to consider the future toolbox. So basically, we're presenting, action plan is the commitments that we, as partners in the strategy, have committed to on paper for this first iteration, and we'll be tracking those delivery of those. And then the future toolbox is things that we might need in the future, and we might need to pursue them further. And then implementation is around just to give you an idea of how we go about implementing the strategy. So the vision and the goals and objectives, all of this draws on both our partner agencies, our strategic objectives, and also the community's values, management as well, and we've sort of combined them together into a vision statement. The reason for having vision is just because part of the strategy's point is to keep us pointing in the same direction, and we can then, compare our, actions that we want to do in the future. Are they all, do they align with our vision and our goals and objectives? So our vision, this is the draft, obviously, all feedback welcome. So our vision is a resilient, sustainable, head of like Whakatipu, where proactive natural hazard and climate adaptation enhances community wellbeing and safety and contributes to a flourishing environment. So that's probably the first big umbrella. And then goals, objectives are ways we're going to work towards that. So we've got 5 goals. So the first one is adaptation is woven into everyday work. So this means basically that we consider adaptation when we're going about our everyday things to make sure that we get the maximum bang for the buck that we're already spending in a lot of ways, but also that we build connections between the agencies and between the community and Manafela, and we coordinate everything so that we basically work effectively together. We want to encourage good practice and those types. So aligning policies and processes. It's a bit boring, but our everyday work can also include an adaptation component. We also want to make sure that we lay a robust foundation for decision making. That's because the strategy is not a decision making document, but it does support the decisions that need to be made. And we want it to be a good foundation, a robust foundation, and something that we can update. We'll update the foundation so that the decisions use the same up-to-date information to inform the decision making. So So points in the same direction about physical environment, continue to build the understanding of threat, as well as uncertainties and opportunity now in the future, that come with natural hazard and climate change. Increasing awareness around the natural hazard risks, as well as effective adaptation responses, to build capacity around adaptation and support communities and decision makers to take advantage of opportunities, and consider ways to incorporate Kaitaho into the decision making frameworks and share new information as it becomes available. Now, goal 3 is around healthy and resilient communities, where we'll lead and support others to actively manage and reduce risks, and the impacts of climate change. We want to support and enable community-led action and behaviour change, promote community safety, and strengthen communities, businesses and organisations so that they're well prepared for natural hazard events and they are able to cope. Resilient built places, infrastructure and systems. I know this is dear to a lot of people's hearts. We want to lead the way for others to increase the resilience of the infrastructure, resources and systems, encourage the responsible management of resources and infrastructure, and prioritising resilience, sustainability, avoiding maladaptation, and maladaptation could be unintentional negative outcomes. Provide information for individuals, for businesses, for agencies, to inform all the decisions that get made, not just the ones we make, so that it can be considered a natural hazard risk and the impacts of climate change. And to support the integration of both traditional and modern local knowledge into planning the development of local infrastructure. We also want to support a flourishing environment. So supporting and enabling nature-based solutions where appropriate, and principles to adapt to natural hazard risk and climate change, and deliver other socio-economic and environmental benefits, like co-benefits, nature-based solutions. Integrate adaptation across council's work programs so we can deliver natural hazards, biodiversity, and wider environmental outcomes. So integration with catchment action planning, for example, would be an example. So that's just blitzed you with 5 goals there. So I've put it on there. If you want to consider them further in the room, those people in the room, they're on the wall over there as well. And you can also, make vote for your which goals you think are more important. You can tell us if we're missing anything. More want to have something that features perhaps economic. If that's something that you think should be in our goals, feel free to shoot them back to us and we will consider them. So that covers our, the big umbrella and the vision of where we want to go and the goals that we think will support us towards that vision. But obviously we haven't, hit nirvana yet. So the first part of implementation is what actions are we going to commit to, and that's what's in the action plan. There's a copy of that also in your handout. So the action plan, there's also a copy over there, and on the table there's some bigger printouts if you find the text a bit small. So the action plan basically is partner agencies and the commitments that we have that are in existing and planned responses. So these are basically the commitments that we tracked, and we'll be reporting back, as they get implemented, we'll tick them off and report back to the community. So there's a number of different themes around these. And we have, I won't read all the new detail, but the first one is around governance and collaboration. So this is working towards basically our first goal. A lot of this is and it's just improving the ways we work together. There's a whole bunch, there's 4 different actions in that one, where we've sort of laid out some descriptions about those. There's things like, you know, ORC and LVC pursuing, you know, an understanding between us on, you know, around adaptation of this. So, you know, that would help support integrated delivery of an implementation. And that's basically what that first 4 actions, most of those are around. The information gathering and monitoring is around investigating the hazards and risks. Now, ORC already does that, and we will continue to do that. If something happens and we need to reactively come back and, you know, investigate it again because something has changed, we will also do that. We also collect data as one of our, and publish data and share data as part of our role. So we document major hazard events, not just us, of course, but also preventive management and QLC and the community. So we would want to, you know, collect the data and learn from it. We will be monitoring the geomorphic change of the river, partly because we know that there's a risk of a sudden change in the location of the main channel, and that's what we want to keep an eye on that. And we also monitor signals triggering thresholds, which is basically just a short form of saying that there are things we keep an eye on in the environment that help to tell us that something is approaching a point where we need to do something new, or, you know, make use of our future toolbox, and that the actions we've got may not be enough for us. And so the combination of signals, triggers and thresholds is simply you know, a list of things that could help us to identify when those key tipping points might be approaching, and we need to implement different responses, for example. And then we want to communicate, report back to the partners and community. And so we have ways we publish information. We also have feedback channels where we provide information back on progress. Now, emergency management, you're all like familiar with the emergency management. I think Glenorchy is a great example of good integration of emergency management. So a lot of the actions in emergency management are around reducing risk, readiness, response and recovery. So improving recovery planning. We also do flood monitoring, forecasting and warning, and, you know, improvements to those are part of business as usual. And there's a bunch of actions around equipment training, exercises, you know, the community hub, things like that. Emergency hub and community response group. So that's the actions under emergency management, and we're learning around what we do and could we do it better, and actions that support that. Number 6, the next category, advice, information and education. There's 6 actions in there, and basically there, for example, the ORC has a natural hazards portal, so we publish information on that hazard on the portal to provide everyone with that information. If something changes and we need to update something, then we'll do that. Also, if we, for example, collect the information on a natural hazard event, we would produce a summary of that and then share it back with the community and with everyone. And so that's the kind of up-to-date natural hazard info that we would be. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a variety of communication channels, so website, newsletter, email, and just keep using those as we work through implementation. And also providing a chance to face-to-face as well. Policy and planning, as we've about, there's a lot of thought and consideration around how we incorporate the adaptation into policy and planning. So things we've committed to is, you know, considering the natural hazard property information for resource and building consents, and collaborating to ensure that the processes and plans that the agencies use to implement and to identify additional funding and those sort of things. Ensure that they're informing and inputting into that and at the right time, so that decision makers will have the right information in front of them in order to make decisions using that information. One piece that is quite interesting, might be a bit esoteric, but for the example of the risk assessment that was done so far is quantitative risk assessments, which identifies a risk to life and property. But the piece that it is we will carry out is looking towards assessing the tolerance. So what's the tolerance of the community around that risk? And so we'll be coming back to have conversations about that. We'll also be talking to QLDC about their tolerance for the risk and ORC. So it's every, a number of different aspects of risk tolerance that we need to talk to people about. But that's one of the actions that we're proceeding with. Including national information on the reports, there's direction from central government already on that. And so that will be carried out. Next one. So this one is largely addressing the impacts of natural hazards and climate change. A lot of this is infrastructure and operations. So, for example, these are some actions from QLDC both around routine maintenance of their assets. So their assets include the roading assets, the Glenorchy jetty, the marina, but they're also the existing flood bank is obviously a QLDC asset. So the routine maintenance of their assets are included in an action plan, and also there's additional items around the Glenorchy area bridge resilience and raising Kinloch Road. These are long-term plan, so 2024 to 2034 items. And also there's a 30-year infrastructure which includes an item around Glenorchy adaptation pathways. In terms of ORC, a lot of it's around river management because that's our major, we don't own any assets here. So based on that, we talk about developing river management plans for the Dark Reefs, among others, gravel management plans for the Bufferburn. We've included an action for maintenance of the existing Reese River floodbank. That's not our asset though, it's a private asset, but not to renew or increase it. That's not in the scope of what we, the current action from ORC. We've got an action to trial NBS for nature-based solution drawings, and also annual vegetation management, rock armouring, and gravel management. So that's sort of the two main aspects at the moment of sort of ORC's footprint up here and QLDC's footprint. We also would we have an action here to try and provide some information support to property owners so that they could undertake property level interventions. So if we could develop some guidance around that to support the community, that's an action that we've proposed. And we're also, there's an action to identify responses, and so basically this is an action around planning for the next long-term plan by getting costed solutions that are suitable for decision makers to make decisions on for the next action plan, if you know what I mean. So that's in preparation for the next round of decision making. That was a bit of anyone have any questions or actions? Or do you want to go to the toolbox or sorry, I feel like there's a lot of information. Actions, but a lot of information to actions, and a lot of people are very interested in what's in the action plan. So there are additional copies over there that are bigger to read. And if you can always come back tomorrow and have a chat to the subject matter experts, and there'll be people in the room who are subject matter experts for all of these subject matter areas that you can discuss them in more detail. or you can ask us questions as well.
So just a question, 'cause some of the actions are existing ones, and there are some of the new actions.
Yes,
So out of the new actions, which would you think will be the most impactful?
the most impactful. I think that's a tricky one to say holistically, because in terms of head of the lake, I don't think it's the individual action plans that the individual actions that necessarily we want to look at in isolation. It's the combination of things that we have committed to doing together that give us the resilience we're looking for. It isn't just it's that next layer up. So for example, we want to both understand what the residual risk is, and then we also want to understand, with that residual risk, what kind of emergency management do we layer on top of that so that we have an effective situation right now, and then in the future that will change what the mix is, but it's always a combination of things together that give you resilience here because of such a complex landscape. So we can't just solve there's no one thing we can just pick up and go, let's fix it. So it's always, trade-offs and balances.
We may take some new risk there, so the new activity may be better. Yeah.
And if the landscape changes significantly and, the river moves or we get a big natural hazard, then the conditions that we have to deal with will be considerably different. And so there's sort of we want to improve long-term the trend of overall resilience, but there'll also be these little points where we have to react and recover and react and recover. So I expect that would sort of be things that we happen. So you try and stay ahead of them as much as possible, but sometimes nature.
I guess I'm just trying to put it from a point of view, we've been doing lots of things up until now. We now have a strategy and it's having some new actions, and so really what's the value of the new actions? How are they, what are the gaps that they're filling? Are they quite self-evident? I think there's a lot of value in having all the foundational information for decision makers to take in front of them and be available at the right time, because what gets in front of decision makers is really dependent on obviously having good information that's ready at the right time, because the decisions aren't made every day. Of course, they're made at various sequences in time, and so having a really good foundation that you can get built into everybody's everyday work, you then just get the best value out of what you're already spending.
You talked very much about what Otago Regional Council are doing, and just in the room, we've done a substantial amount of work in this area from the general ratepayers paying for this. What I'm really interested in is where QLEC are in this, because they've sort of been mentioned, but we haven't heard from them, and where they're, I appreciate the maintenance, but it's actually them being part of the community and taking some of the stuff forward rather than the ORC. Because some of it is now getting to the level that it would be generally dealt with by a local GA. And what is their commitment so far? I know we've got one in the room.
I was going to say, Kate, would you like to introduce yourself?
I think it's actually, I couldn't be helpful to know with people on the room.
All right, mate. Thank you so much for that. And I know that there was a chance here wasn't there for a little bit of an introduction. So, thanks everyone, obviously, for coming along. I will stand in front of the camera. So, quick introduction. Bill Nicol. I am the Resilience and Climate Action Manager at QLEC. So, I am representing quite a large, obviously, institution here, Kate. So, I'll do my best to give a little bit of an overview as to how this project kind of connects in with Council, QLEC's responsibilities and commitments to the local community. But obviously, it's a highly complex challenge, and we acknowledge the work that has been undertaken by the ORC and the Natural Hazards team. An incredible, 5-year program of technical reports, and the quality of the investigations and stuff is right up there. So it is a very complicated challenge, though, and as we connect into the activities and focus areas of council, we are looking at everything from building consents, resource consents, land use planning, the guess, the wharves, the jetties, the community facilities that we're in at the moment, the roading network, the Three Waters network, and even into emergency management. So there are multiple touch points into the regional, into the district council, sorry, and I have the good fortune of kind of being a conduit for many of those. What we are seeing is that the work that's been done to understand what is happening, what matters most, and then to understand the pathways and options that are available are incredibly important inputs that will go into the district council's processes around district planning, around resource and consenting, and into the infrastructure planning and community facility investment programs as well. So Kate, the clear answer is that this is a vital piece of work that feeds into those processes. We have stepped into our long-term plan last year with a 10-year plan with some degree of budgeting around the pathway options that are starting to be looked at through this program. And there are investments already underway, as mentioned, John. So significant work on, for example, Shepherd's Hut Creek. There's already been existing work around the Rees Bridge. So there is lots of work that's going on in the back. It's always there, including the maintenance of the roading assets, John, around Kinloch. And so this work will start to, I guess, move us into that proactive planning space. Proactivity is never kind of the strong suit of many things. It's often very reactive. But the fact we've got some very clear strategies in place with technical evidence underpinning them allows the priorities of this community to be kind of put forward when we're looking at those budgets and investment planning processes. It's probably no secret that the district's roading network is under incredible pressure from many different hazard areas. Take a trip over the Crown Range over winter and you can see just how much kind of activity is happening around there and all throughout the district. So as we're balancing out the available funding, the priorities that exist into where resilience investments are going to be made, I'm really confident this piece of work will help to look and put the needs of this community up there, along with everything else from Makaroa through to Kingston, Luggett, everywhere across the district. It's a very formative piece of work, very complicated challenge that's been taken, that's been stepped into. We're not rebuilding after an event. There has been some recent events that give us an indication about what could happen, but just proactive planning around resilience and adaptation options. It's a big challenging area. So tomorrow there will be more representatives from the district council. They'll be covering across community partnerships and what we do with emergency management. We'll have some infrastructure representation too, Kate, in terms of how this information is feeding into the investment programs. But I will say, one of the big things that has occurred with our 30-year infrastructure strategy last year, and this is the strategy that dictates everything we're going to be spending our money on over the next 30 years, it was very heartening to see that resilience to natural shock events and climate change is one of the top pillars of that strategy. Right, so that kind of shows the fact that the prioritisation around understanding those resilience investments for all of the Queensland Lakes District Council's assets around the district, that's up there as one of the key kind of considerations as we start to look at where money needs to be spent. So that's a bit of a broad brush, okay? Absolutely. Yep, and this was the perfect spot for me to get up and say hi to everyone anyway. And I also want to acknowledge the community. Significant amount of fortitude and stamina to stay with the process. But at the very heart of it is community, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So that model, there's a lot to it, but community is right at the heart, and acknowledging just the tension that sometimes exists with sharing technical information early before all their solutions and answers are understood. That's quite a significant thing for the community to grapple with, and I acknowledge that all of the efforts that have gone into attending these meetings and being here tonight as well. So I'll be here tomorrow along with a few more colleagues, and we'll be able to kind of talk probably a little bit more detail if there is around specific areas of the asset network we want to have a chat about. I'll leave it there. Any questions while I'm up here?
I heard John tell us that the lakes and armies have a significant hazard, but there was no measurement. Has there been any study done from prediction on what the maximum credible event was in the lake?
There are studies underway. There's a PhD study underway to better understand previous tsunamis and practically what's coming. So that's, like I said at the introduction, basically we don't have a lot of information around them, and we're trying to fill that gap.
And that study is due to be
I have to ask for an update. It was in, I think it's midway, so it's another year and a half before finishing. But
Because as you travel around New Zealand, if you're in the coast, people are talking about safe areas for an ocean tsunami. But equally, because we're so close to the Alpine Fault, the extinction in this situation would be a significant event. And yet it's wonderful the information that's been passed on to us, but I mean, it's something that Queenstown, I'd like to know what QLEC is.
Yeah. But I know the study's been underway for a while, John Luke, and while we're waiting, there has been some, I guess, technical guidance, would I say that, provided by whenua? Or am I? I've got to be very careful. I know a little bit about a lot, and I'll get myself into trouble if I talk too much about things. But we have discussed, I guess, with around satiating, tsunami risk within the lake. It's, dare I say, it's fairly good positive news in terms of what has been shared to date, in terms of really modelling the rest of it, in terms of the potential impact for it. Risk compared to other kind of considerations around an AF8. Without stepping out of my lane, I say relatively minor compared to the other kind of cascading hazards that could happen throughout the earthquake. And I don't know, do you want to correct me on that, John Luke, or am I stepping too far out of my lane?
Well,
Yeah, because lots of discussion around the delta falling and other rockfall events and the rest of it. So yeah, it's in terms of there's a significant range of risks associated and hazards associated with a massive earthquake event, and that's good. There is consideration around that, but at the moment it doesn't seem to be of a level of risk to the community out beyond some of those other factors that have been investigated in detail, such as liquefaction, lateral spread, and rockfall risk and other things. So I don't know if that gives any comfort, it just opens up more questions. But
Sleepy is tonight.
yeah.
I think you're telling me it's unknown.
It's the technical reports, as I know, haven't yet been completed, but the early kind of investigations, which we were partial to, because there was discussions. I think it was a lake evacuation workshop. Was it Craig?
Yeah.
Your memory might be better than mine.
Yeah, and so that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that was the early indications. Actually, the studies that have been done for previous AFA events that have happened, we're kind of in the 20s now for AFAs. There's no evidence of, there's no clear evidence of a great tsunami on the lake. Plenty of evidence of debris flows and that sort of thing. But and the evidence of station, which is kind of more the slopping of the lake, is about 50 centimeters. So spring. So you know, I don't think as a hazard, the early indicators are it's not as big as we think. So,
yeah, so that's the untechnical view, but that's that's what we're sticking with at the moment.
And the other thing is that I'm very grateful for all the work that's been done by the ORC and looking at this and informing us. I see that when you look at the flooding hazards that we have, there's a lot of work being done at Kinloch, and heaven knows there's a great need for road realignment there. But just on the lagoon, the Brassington study tells us that the river will, in time, avulse into the lagoon. And in 2020, we had the levee overtopped. I can see the action that's going in, this dumping of spoil, which is effectively raising the levee on the downstream side of it by dumping there. But where it overtopped before, it overtopped at the on the golf course property at the lagoon, and the lagoon is maybe up to half a metre higher than where the outlet is into the Rees River, and that's where it will after it's been graded, it's being done by volunteer labour in Glenorchy with some spraying and things like that. But below the bridge, 5 trees.
At the footbridge there.
Yeah, below there are 3 willow trees that are now impeding the draining of, they're across, almost blocking the stream flow. And in a flood event, they'd be washed into the stream and cause more blockage. So, and then above the bridge, there's another tree that is likely to fall. Is this part of your study that you're doing? Because it's likely that it's happened once before, and likely to happen again.
Yeah, so it's part of managing vegetation in the lagoon. We removed some vegetation in the past after the 2020 event, and it's part of our regular maintenance. So Scott can explain more about that.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott.
Scott?
I look after the rivers and,
Oh,
yeah, we did that willow clearing, along Lagoon Creek. I don't know, it was 6-7 years ago. We've done like with a digger and cleared the willows from lagoon to the mouth. And hopefully Doc, we're going to take care of the spraying to maintain that vegetation so we have that capacity. But as you're saying, yeah, that's something that I can get rid of. I just wasn't aware of that. If there are blockages within Lagoon Creek, yeah, I'm the one to sort that out. I'll get someone leave the digger and whip it out because we want that to flow as freely as possible.
fantastic. I'll be happy to show you.
Perfect. I'm here tomorrow. Yeah, I'll go for a look before I come tomorrow.
Good, all right. Happy customer.
Just on that.
So, we also, like, for example, I think this is part of the benefit of the strategy is to get a whole bunch of people who are contributing parts of the overall resilience into the same space to coordinate, make sure we get, so we get, your insights and observations, which are obviously in the area all the time. And we've got a mechanism that you can submit them to us, and we'll distribute them to all of the relevant people, partners in the strategy, so that we can make sure that we have we have connections between agencies, and we can work together to be more integrated and deliver more effective work with the money that we're already spending. Basically, we just want to do it in the most effective way, and we want to give you opportunities and ways in which you can give us those sorts of insights so that we can proceed in the most effective way. Okay, does anyone have any questions around anything else around there? Otherwise, next one. So that's action plan, existing commitment. If there's anything you're disappointed not to see in the action plan, feel free to let us know. Or if there are actions that you think should be the highest and best priority, feel free to give us that kind of feedback as well. The next part of it is to talk through in the draft strategy. These are the future toolbox. So these aren't the commitments because these don't yet have business cases. That they don't have supporting cost benefits, etc. So those sort of quite detailed information would need to be required for decision makers to make decisions around these. Now some of these are there's existing natural hazard management strategy, natural hazard management responses that are very common and not unusual at all in terms of what the item actually is. So in that case, they're just part of the general decision making of the agencies whose responsibility that is. There are some though that the responsibility is not, they're out of the ordinary or out of the box, or they're just simply not something that we normally do. Any of the partners who signed up for the strategy, in which case, they would need their own processes to implement them if we did pursue them in the future, and there was funding identified to carry them out. So I'll point some of those out as we go through, but most things on the list would fall under general natural hazard management approaches, but there are a few out of the box ones that aren't currently, the role and responsibilities aren't well defined. So they would be much more challenging to pursue, is what I'm trying to say there. So in terms of, hazard awareness and mitigation, what we might possibly need in the future, this is, the first one is simply a line item around, as part of what we're trying to do is make everyone fully aware of the residual risk. Now, residual risk can change over time. Residual risk is, these are the responses we already have in place. This is the resilience, and this is, the emergency management and everything that, this is the patchwork of a puzzle of resilience, snapshot at any time. And there's still residual risk, right? As you're all aware, we have the current flood bank, so we have the current residual risk. We have the current river channel moving that way, so we have certain risk associated with that. So in terms of existing development, there's a component of, do we think that that's tolerable or do we not? So that's where this risk tolerance work that we're going to work towards is to work towards in the future, possibly, being in a position to understand our residual risk very well, and for us all to be on the same page about, is it possible to keep reducing it, or have it hit a point where we're going to have to accept it. So it's just, I just want to put it there as just something for people to think about, because it is, there are certain hazards for some of the existing development that, there's not a reasonable amount of money in the world to basically solve that problem. So it's something, the risk tolerance work that we have in the action plan is working towards this understanding of what residual risk is acceptable to the community. Not just the community, obviously, but also, those who supply services, for example, and to community in a broader sense than just the local. Okay, next one. Future toolbox for road access. So this would be around, small scale improvement or changing the level of service of the road. Is a potential option that if you needed it in the future could be pursued. There's also the option to increase major works. So that would be something like raising, realigning, protection in the road. And then this line item is around if something happens and you need to reactively redesign because there's been an event and a large part of your road is not there anymore. So this is those are like a future toolbox for road access. So the kind of things that we can pursue through the decision-making process. Small scale improvements, changing the level of service, major works, and reactive redesign. For change conditions. Okay. So in some cases, post-event, obviously the conditions will have changed, and so sometimes it's not just a question of replacement, it's the new conditions and the old design don't work together anymore. So that's basically road access, that possible future responses. We also, I've included, we received a lot of feedback on this through the community around the potential boat access for having alternative forms of access was something that was valued. And the sort of possible future responses could be around, can you improve what we have? Is there a boat access resilience, more resilient solution? Do we need to put it somewhere else? Do we, what would that look like? Who does it have to serve? What sort of boats, that kind of thing. And then, depending on where you put it and the growth of the delta, you might have to consider, do you need to move it in the future? And so that would be part of the consideration of a resilient boat access solution. Next up. Future toolbox around flood protection. So what's currently in the action plan is around maintenance of what's already there. The Glenorchy flood bank, we could do some small scale improvements. We could do major works. Major works would increase the level of service. We can potentially redesign the flood protection for change conditions. So for example, if we get an emulsion event and we can't put the roof back where it was, we would then be investigating, you know, does the old flood protection work for the new conditions? What, you know, redesign might we need to do to come up with an acceptable level of risk for the town? Is there management major interventions we can invest in the future? Or there's still a redesign component to that because you know, you would still, even though nature-based solutions are typically very sustainable, those again do have a design component, and so they're designed to perform certain tasks. And if the conditions change, you then again you need to redesign them. And the other one we have been talking about is small scale works to reduce the buffer burn, erosional flood risk. So the erosion here is around, you know, if the active channel moves up hard against the road, that, you know, is a potential risk. Another category that we have been talking about is, you know, is the improved resilience of critical assets in higher hazard areas. Now, this could be public assets, and this would be the responsibility, obviously, of the asset owner. But there's, you know, things you can do to improve property level resilience, such as, you know, floodproofing, ground raising, floor raising, structure strengthening, etc., and things like that. And then the same can apply to private property resilience as well. So the other one was around critical public assets, and this one would be about private property resilience. Same sort of suite of possible responses. The one that doesn't, so this would be, you know, obviously it's property owner level of responsibility. The one that the community-wide resilience that we, you know, have talked about around work you could do for the liquefaction hazard, that is sort of outside the within out of the ordinary response, because it's just not something that any council standardly does. So that would need its own process and a very large effort. The policy, I know the policy is something that people brought up a lot of ideas about that, and most of those made it to the final list around policy. So, you know, reviewing the hazard and risk information and setting what standards are appropriate. Some of that, you know, is also related back to what's tolerable risk for the community as the agency. You could strengthen land use controls in high hazard areas to avoid additional exposure. So these are, you know, new development. We could identify and make hazard lower and make available lower hazard land for new building if we needed it. There's policy and planning around recovery plan improvement. This is at the moment sort of seeing with emergency management, and, you know, with input from QLC and from others as well. There's, you know, more improvements we could pursue in that space, you know, as having something ready to go if we need it. The other piece, the last three basically would also be, you know, this proactive relocation planning is not a space, is also an undefined space, and we need like a bespoke solution for that, and something that we would need more clarity around about how best to approach that if it was something we need in the future. Similarly, the last, you know, voluntary proactive relocation that goes together with the plan, if that's something that wants to be pursued. And then the last one is reactive post-event retreat. And that one, you know, in New Zealand's context, would typically be accompanied by a plan that's developed by multiple agencies and the community being involved. But there isn't a standard approach yet in New Zealand for that, and so it would require a recovery plan to be developed. So that's sort of policy. Oh, implementation. I think probably most of this already. You know, the implementation through our well-established processes, except if it's an out-of-box thing that we don't have a well-established process for. So, you know, we're talking about the regional policy statement, the long-term plans of both councils, those policy and planning rules and consent and zoning, things like that. And then, of course, Otago has a CDM has a group plan where they put forward what they're going to do. And, you know, we're proposing that all the actions will appear, you know, will be decisions will be made through those processes because they have regular update cycles. And, you know, this is when decisions are made. And that's the opportunity that exists through those processes. Another point to make probably is that using these processes, there's an opportunity through the public consultation to advocate as well for things that you want to see there. And if you know, have something ready to go, it's much easier to advocate for it. So that's the sort of usual way of making hazard. And then the out of the box things that I mentioned, there's only about 3 of them. They would require very specialised funding, one-off plans, processes, and governance arrangements because they just simply aren't something you can do. If there's a tailored recovery plan would be required if you've got the safety implementation. And what we're hoping is, you know, in addition to hoping that the strategy will be useful for the community, also to, you know, align initiatives that the community is hoping to do, and also, you know, to advocate for the things that you want to see happen, and, you know, make use of it in that way as well. So the other point I meant to make, Jeremy.
Just a point on that. Before last sentence with future responses. We know and John mentioned that in his presentation. We know central government is looking at how is a country going to manage natural disaster adaptation. We don't have a clear direction yet, but that's something they are very interested in, and this will influence probably what Anne was talking about. Manage relocation or mitigation of hazards. It's yeah, not yet there, but there's that desire for central government to be more consistent and be more provide more guidance to local government. Okay.
All of these steps, I've been in politician too long. I know that all of these steps are very, very public. And all of the information you've found, thankfully, is very, very public, which is great. But if you're looking at relocation, the main thing is to get land cheaply now and identify that and almost bring super well. Because as you go down these steps, that land just becomes more expensive. And I don't know that you've identified that other location. I hope you haven't told people that in some ways. But that seems to be the step that needs to be. It's the most expensive front-up cost, but it's the cheapest one long term to do that. And I think any place in South Dunedin, if they already knew where they were going to relocate South Dunedin, then that whole conversation would be a very different conversation. But I'm just wondering, if there was a desire to be, as a community, to have that vision, that we have an easy and affordable pathway, given the extreme land values here, what are the private considered sensible steps that may not be so public as a long-term plan and whose role that is? Because that timeline seems to be the bit that may be missing. Does that make sense?
Good.
No, so I can answer that, okay, if that's okay from the community association. So we've been telling people for several years that there's a very large area of reserve land next to the airstrip, huge reserve of the peninsula. As you're coming into Glenorchy, which would be an amazing location if you had to move the town. And it's council land, it is reserve land. There are some issues around there, but
It's not to say you couldn't end up with a lot more reserve land down here, for example, on a swap, as happens, as you know, when reserve land is really classified. So some of the community association has raised, what is the option for recovery post event? And we're comfortable that there's a really, really good block of land. There's a lot of legal processes to go through. I think that the views are amazing. We've got an airstrip next door, so that's, what more could you want? And they'll all be electric in another 10 years. So that will be the community association position if we had to move.
Oh, that's good, because you've got something, which is absolutely a gem. Because I would almost hate to be going so far down that they hadn't site hadn't been explored and just kept that it doesn't have other risks to it.
Could I add to that point a slightly different perspective that personally I think of the risk in two major contexts. This one, the high impact, low frequency event, which is the earthquake pole line going, in which case, see what Glenorchy's like, and then will probably almost certainly be moving. And the other one is the higher frequency but low risk would be, which is your flooding stuff. And I've often thought that if this whole process had started with that sort of division, then maybe the community might have actually latched onto it a wee bit easier, because it would have been something tangible to work on. I think you'd probably find quite a few people would be happy to sit there even if the house is going to go underwater, but after the earthquake. But we can sort of let's have a look at it after the earthquake.
I think that's a good point when the discussion around tolerance would be initiated. I think that's exactly people may be able to tolerate frequent flooding because of the consequences of already large consequence earthquake and not tolerable, and that's where we trigger the need to regulate.
To be clear, there are two obviously very different scenarios, and while increasing, I guess, threat risk from the river system is a climate change and therefore a managed retreat scenario. There's no managed retreat scenarios from seismic risk, correct? So at the moment it's all about proactive planning for the event and the recovery that can occur afterwards. We have seen recent examples in New Zealand, it's a buy-out situation after an event. It becomes intolerable or the land is no longer fit for use. So two, as you said, plus quite a complicated, I guess, hazardscape that you're dealing with, but two quite different scenarios in terms of proactive retreat from the hazard that's there.
There's a question online from Nikki, and hopefully Nikki can hear us and she'll be able to.
Yeah. Hi, Pete, can you hear me?
Yeah, the IT department's done well here, Nikki, good to go.
Awesome, hey, thanks. Look, my question's sort of in the same vein as where Kate's coming from. Thanks, Kate. When we started this process, we were told, I think that we're sort of following an adaptation pathway process, and that was explained by whenua as, you'll start down this path, but when something happens, we'll set up a trigger, and that's when we'll start to do this, and you'll go down this path. And look, maybe that's not appropriate anymore. It could be for a number of reasons if it's not, but we don't seem to have any triggers and any pathways. We've got lots of things in future toolbox, but we don't know when they begin, and there's no sort of trigger that prepares you for what might come. And it therefore feels quite reactive, because these processes, as we know in council, take forever, whether it's long-term planning or policy planning. And it seems to me we need to get ahead of the problem, because one day it's going to happen, and if we're going to be resilient, we need to be prepared and have that thing there ready to go. So I'm just interested in, one, whether that pathways process disappeared, and if so, why, and how do we put triggers in place to make sure we have these tools ready when we need them, because some of them are sort of 3, 4, 5 year processes. Thanks. And I'm looking particularly at the policy stuff around recovery plans, proactive relocation, long-term, district plan stuff.
and not getting developers in there owning and selling it for us.
I think that's probably the other piece as well, is that some of the governance part needs advocating both up as well, that there's a gap and that, you know, in New Zealand context, that, you know, so that's also what we can use the strategy, you know, to reinforce the need for more flexible or, you know, more innovative solutions than what we pursued previously in the past. And I think that's the space where also the strategy can help reinforce, you know, there's quite a bit of national work going on towards, you know, what sort of tools do we need in the future in New Zealand context for all of these types of, all of the hazards that the New Zealand faces. So I think it's further supporting the information to say that type of governance tool needs to be available so that people can, that councils and communities can take advantage of those kind of things. So it is something that we're missing in that landscape. And I think it'd be really good, you know, people make submissions on towards central government to say, you know, reinforce that there's this gap, which has been identified. But yeah, at the moment we don't have a national solution for it.
Sorry, so are you, just to get to the.
Sorry, Nikki, I was going to get to the signals and triggers. So there
okay.
is, I did put a little bit on signals, triggers, and thresholds in the detailed report. So it's probably best to go back and have a look in there. So there's a couple of pages on that. And what I initially came up with is to keep it really tightly focused on, you know, unacceptable outcomes. And there's some ones that I've sketched out in there. It's about 5, they're less than 10. And things that we already do to monitor, because there's such a broad suite of possible individual parameters we can see trends and all of that kind of stuff. But actually, we already collect a lot of information. It's just a matter of keeping an eye on it to see where it's going. So that's not just the insights, that's not just the, obviously the river monitoring and things like that, but that's also the information we receive from the community. You know, so if you keep feeding back to us, you know, about the insurance situation, or you keep thinking back about the willows growing in the river, you know, we get to incorporate that into as part of our, you know, feedback from the community, and observations that are, you know, where are the trends going? You know, obviously, the fact that you used to be able to drive a dozer under the bridge and now you can't, you know, that's a strong signal. And we know that's occurring. So we've already got monitoring in place that covers quite a lot of stuff. And so in the effort to make a most cost-effective solution, my initial suite of signals, thresholds and unacceptable outcomes is quite short. And I'm happy to have feedback on that if you think there should be something else in there that you think might individually be useful for the community from the community observations perspective. So that's basically, and that keeps us ahead as far as much as possible where we need to be. So yes, at this stage, I'm not proposing signals and triggers. That would be something, I need a whole new signals and triggers plan. We're basically just make best use of the information that we're already planning to, that we collect now and that we plan to collect, you know, on a regular basis. But feedback on that is welcome.
Yeah, just one question. I'm conscious of the time.
I'm already standing at the Christmas.
Oh, okay. But just going back to the actions about, you know, public buildings, things like that, and responses and reaction to that. Whilst Bill's in the room, and if he's not able to give an answer, it'd be great if we bring one tomorrow, is just to confirm whether there's any discussion within council about the future of this building that we're sitting in. Because I'd be very surprised if there wasn't. And if there is discussion about that, I think it'd be really quite good to know what's happening and who's part of that discussion.
I will do some investigation. I'm not sure the status of current planning for this facility.
For the facility, okay.
So yeah,
That's a good
Individual.
question.
It is a very good question.
What I can say to John is concept of community emergency hubs is a very important one. Now I'm not saying Mr. Craig is still with us. This is this designated as emergency the head of the lake. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So yes, so John, we're community facilities perform a very important function around supporting resilience groups. That's a key consideration around there. But we'll have a look into what's waiting in this particular building.
Yeah, thank you.
Particularly where it sits.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, sorry, I got distracted.
Turn the lights on.
Thank you, Bill. Do we have any more online questions there, Pete?
No.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, please do. Yeah.
Perhaps background, this might seem a bit strange, but in the younger days, I used to be a sort of conservative, but you guys used to be called catchment balls in those days. So I wonder, and now I'm a dog, or have been, I wander around this country and I notice things like tension cracks and deep seated movements in the soil. And I note that your study area is controlled by swimming ways trainers club, isn't the lower part of it. And I wonder if maybe on perhaps a 10-year cycle, you should include the whole catchment. Because I've seen tension cracks in the head of the reefs, with slumps starting. Then I mean, there's some in the what's the stream up the reef in? Anyway, there's some up here, there's muscular lines there, there's tension cracks there, so there's a deep seated movement starting. And I think it would be useful to have advanced warning if those sites become active, because you've probably got 20 years or so before the gravel goes from the head of the dart and the reefs to the roof. But that's maybe quite useful advanced warning.
What do they mean, those tension cracks?
Well, the ground is slumping. And the head of it, you get this crack form, and you can have it all here. You look up on the hill up, Julia, you can see a couple of big ones up there.
Like, how much of the area is the LiDAR?
There's been a lot of LiDAR on the data reefs.
Yeah, but only on, but not on the hills.
Oh, yeah.
No, because so it's good news about that coming.
So absolutely, LiDAR is really powerful.
No,
The LiDAR will give you a good, like,
if one does activate, well, bucket boom concerns me more because it's going to be a very rapid transit time, gravel from the bucket boom down to the north. But up the end of the valleys, you've probably got a 20-year lead in time. But it would be nice to just have occasionally, and the doc would be a good person to liaise with that, because they've got upwardens wandering around, so the fire team are doing the.
There's a good example where we picked up these types of hazards, baskets, and recent example, up the Heron, the small slip, a little bit more mobile with one toilet, and so the team are regularly monitoring it, and also use people like yourself to report these types of things and making results in a specific investigation. But we'll consider that feedback, it's good feedback, and look at how we can incorporate that into long-term programs.
the back of has been lost of the movement, though, I mean, it's been thin, isn't it? But that's the only one here, apart from the double risk. It's been monitored.
Not this landslide. What we monitor is more the river, and but not the extreme catchment.
To manage the forest section to have capacity to pass this types of much.
Okay, so you're not actually, I mean, so sometimes things aren't that they leave at the top of the catchment, they come over and that's where you don't necessarily pick up something's happening. Yeah, and yeah, so.
Sugarloaf has been up the raccoon, so it's quite a big area.
What did you say, Sugarloaf?
Sugarloaf.
I'll write that down.
Does it go to the second?
Yeah.
Certainly no, I mean, we don't really consider hazards to have a hard boundary. Because we deal with all of Otago, so, you know, this program sits under some of the work that we do that's, you know, very sort of integrated for this particular work, but we are also broadly looking at natural hazards for all of Otago. So we have programs to fill in, you know, gaps across Otago and things we're working towards in that space as well. But yes, whether it sits here or there, you know, obviously, thank you for the input because we'll take that into consideration. So I think the current action plan, monitoring plan that environmental monitoring action plan, which is in blue on the wall, includes you know, the geomorphic change assessment. So at the moment, I don't think we were thinking scope would include that far, but you know, we can assess what a suitable scope for that would be and then see whether we can incorporate that in. So we haven't got down to that level of detail of plan, but the action plan is to do a geomorphic change assessment for the regularly for the restart, and that would include, you know, LiDAR of the river systems, but also how far we extend. We haven't defined that yet. It doesn't have to be the study areas I'm trying to emphasize. It'll be whatever's suitable for the hazard. But that's really good feedback. Thank you. Anything else? Questions? I've exhausted you all. Great feedback. Thank you, everyone. That's really, you know, really good conversation, which has been really valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, yes, it's, we have just 5 minutes left. So online people participate online. So if any have questions, so you know, see the thing this is close as of today. And after that, we have some refreshment and food here, some here the students, so you can enjoy the get up. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. So you know, we introduce to the center today.
Thank you.